chapter 18. Genesis chapter 18, and we're going to be starting, about halfway through the chapter. We're going to be starting in verse 16 tonight. What we are looking at tonight is going to be a fairly well-known account. However, there are some things that stood out to me as being new, and there are things that very well might be new to some of you tonight as we look at this. So let's get into it. Genesis chapter 18. I'm going to start reading verse 16. Okay, so actually before we start reading, real quick, just so you know exactly where we are, is this is where the Lord came with two angels to meet with Abraham, and it's when Sarah was hiding behind the wall and laughed at God when the Lord said, she was going to have a child. This is that account, and we're coming in just after the whole Sarah account there. Verse 16, and the men rose up from thence and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. And the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him? For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord, to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him. And the Lord said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me, and if not, I will know. And the men turned their faces from thence, and went toward Sodom, but Abraham stood yet before the Lord. Let's stop right there. Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for tonight. Lord, I thank you for those that have come out tonight, or those that may be worshiping online or on TV, Lord, with us tonight. Lord, I pray that you just bless tonight. May your Spirit move in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so what we are looking at here is this is the point where they have finished their meal, and where they were having their meal, they were in a place where the ladies of the house, we can put it, could be easily hiding and listening in on their conversation. So what we are seeing now, the meal is done. You notice it says that the men got up, they rose up from thence and looked towards Sodom. So they, at this point, have gotten up from the table. They are done with their with this lavish meal that Abraham put together very quickly, and it is at this point, it is showing a real importance here by them standing. Now, a lot of people may say, "Oh, this okay. It's nothing big about it. They're just standing up. They're going to go talk about this." They very well could have done it while they were sitting eating. They're eating their meal. They could have talked about this. They could have talked about the issue with Sodom, but they did not. Why? When you're sitting at the meal, or at the dinner table, eating, you're relaxed. You're typically not going to talk of anything of great importance. Why?
Indigestion.
Oh.
Not to mention this politician will have a heart attack there.
Yeah. So, the pastor's supposed to be the one throwing me off, Patty, not you. You're supposed to be the one keeping me on the straight and narrow here. Keep me on topic. when you are sitting down at a dinner table, you can ask, I'm sure that any of the women would attest to this, how much attention are you going to get from your husband while he has food sitting in front of him? Very little. Okay? Why?
Unless you're holding his steak.
Unless you're holding his food hostage. The person's attention is going to be on the food in front of them. So when it is a conversation, it's going to be a deep, very important conversation. It's usually not something that's reserved for the dinner table. It's something you would you get up and go elsewhere to be able to be more, and not so much a relaxed state, you could say. So that's really the significance of this, getting up and saying, look, we need to talk to you. Come over here where we can see, and they're looking in the direction they can see Sodom in the distance. Said, we need to talk to you about what's going on here. Now, first thing that we see, though, is the Lord speaks out, but he doesn't, even though he's speaking out and asking this question, he's still doing it. Remember, Abraham's right there. Abraham hears him ask this question. The Lord asks, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. Now, what the Lord is saying, he's just like, well, do I really have to tell him? Okay? Do I really have to share this with him? Because no matter what, this is not, the destruction of Sodom is not going to affect the covenant with Abraham. It's not going to affect that blessing of him becoming a great, and his line becoming a great and mighty nation. It's not going to affect it. Do I really need to tell him this? Now, why would he say that out loud in front of Abraham, so Abraham could hear that? Well, he immediately answers it, because that is where the question itself ends, but the Lord keeps speaking. Verse 19, for I know him. The Lord is saying, I know Abraham. This is talking about that intimate relationship. Okay? This is not talking about, oh, I just know what kind of man he is. Now, he does go on to continue down, saying, I know what he will do from here on out. You know, when he finds out about this or whatever, I know that he'll do justly. I know that he'll do the right thing. But he first starts out, for I know him. In Isaiah 41:8, Abraham is referred to as a friend of God. Okay? This is, so we know that it is gone, that this relationship, even at this point, between Abraham and the Lord, has gone from, or is left behind, you could say, acquaintance level, okay? And also just a mere friend. Like, you know, I have people I work with that I say, yeah, they're a friend, you know, a work friend. Okay, it's gone beyond that. Do I know my work friends or any of my the tenants in the buildings that I care for who have become, you know, kind of friends? Do I know much about them? No. Do they know much about me? Not really. They know what I do for work, and they know that I also serve in the church. I mean, that's the extent, okay, they know of me, other than the fact they know I'm married, and a lot of them have seen my kids on multiple occasions. But anyways, you know, they don't know me. They don't really know who I am. They don't know what makes me tick, you might say, okay? But that is what we are seeing here. The Lord is saying, I know him. And then he doesn't even wait for anybody to say, you don't see anybody else, whether the other angels or Abraham at this point, speak up. for that question. Why? They knew Jesus already answered it. There was no reason there for anybody to speak up. And then it goes on in verse 20 and 21 is the Lord is saying, the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great because their sin is very grievous. He is saying their sin is so bad. Essentially, the ground cries up to me, okay? There is nothing good being seen coming out of Sodom at this point at all. And we'll see that in a little bit as well with Lot and his life. So then he goes on and says that he is going to go down, and if this cry that he has heard, this cry caused by the sin, if that is true, he is going to destroy Sodom. And as at this point in verse 22, that it says, and the men turned their faces from thence, that's talking about the two angels with the Lord, and they left, went towards Sodom, but Abraham stood yet before the Lord. Now I'm not going to read verses 23 through the end of the chapter, simply because we'll do a quick synopsis of that, okay? So Abraham, obviously, he just heard the Lord speak and say what he's going to do. He's going to destroy Sodom. Well, Abraham knew Lot's down there. Lot was married, so was Lot and his wife. And Lot, we don't know for sure how many, but we know from what we read further on that he had daughters. I would say that you could say he had at least 4 daughters, if not more. We see no indication of sons. And, so Abraham says, well, he reasons with God, bargains with God, and says, look, God, I know you're a righteous God. I know you would not destroy those that love you because of the sin of others. I know that you would not wipe them out. So that's when he goes into the reasoning and the bargaining. And he starts out with 50. He says, God, if there are just 50 down there in that city that serve you, just 50 that are righteous, would you spare the city? The Lord says, yes, I would. He goes on 45, same thing. Then he drops it to 30. The Lord says the same thing. Gives him the same answer, yes, I would spare it for 30. Well, this is now showing you, though, as we look at this, that Abraham is starting to it's really starting to occur to him that, wait a second, what if Lot has not been doing what he should be down there? If the cry is that great, and, that the Lord wants to destroy Sodom, that must mean that Lot's not doing a very good job down there at, as we call it, spreading the gospel, okay? He's obviously not doing a good job, so I gotta go lower. 20. How about 20, God? Lord's like, yes, I'll spare him. Just to be on the safe side. Abraham goes and he starts doing the math. Let's see, Lot, his wife, let's say at least 4 daughters. I gotta get my fingers right here. 4 daughters and at least 2 son-in-laws, because that is mentioned later on in chapter 19 in the plural, son-in-laws. So gotta be at least 2. Okay, that covers it. 10 will save it. 10 will save Sodom, because Lot has to have at least ministered to and witnessed to his son-in-laws and his daughters that are married to them, all of that. So, they're going to be safe. I'm going to ask God, I'm going to drop it all the way to 10. Lord, would you save the city if there were just 10? The Lord says, yes, I will. It is at this point that we see the Lord, it says in verse 33, the Lord went his way as soon as he had left communing with Abraham, and Abraham returned unto his place. Okay, so the Lord has now left. Now we're getting into chapter 19. Okay, chapter 19 is, we will see how far we get. I'm hoping we can get through it, but we'll see. Chapter 19 is the chapter that deals specifically with the whole Sodom destruction account. Let's just start right in verse 1. And there came 2 angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. And Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face towards the ground. Right away, we see Lot, is comfortable where he is. And he would have at this point had some sort of importance, and that's what it means when he was sitting in the gate, It's not just a lounge area. This would have meant that he would have had some importance, not a real high up official, but he would have been, he would have had a position of some sort in the city, in the government there, one where the majority, or everybody, or at least the majority, would have known him. When he saw these 2 men coming towards him, he bowed himself to the ground. He knew, just by looking at them, that they were not just 2 ordinary men. He knew that these were messengers, you could say. These sent from God. Now, whether he knew that they were actually angels at this point, I'm not sure. However, he saw their importance, and even though he was in that seat of his own importance in the city, he still bowed himself to the ground, where anybody else around could have seen him do it. And he said, so these guys, these 2 angels, these men that approach him, have not, as far as what's said here, they have not even spoken anything to him yet. And yet he says, in verse 2, behold now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and ye shall rise up early, and go on your ways. And they said, nay, but we will abide in the street all night. And he pressed upon them greatly, and they turned in unto him, and entered into his house, and he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat. So he immediately says to them, he just goes, this is not good that they are here. I know they are sent from the Lord, sent by the Lord. I know that it's not good that they are here. And, as we'll see in a few minutes, them coming in the form of men would be very dangerous, you could say, to their health. However, this is also kind of showing his real lack of belief. Are you leaving? This is showing his real lack of belief here, because if he truly believed that these were angels sent from God, and that he would have known that, God would not have allowed the townspeople to have hurt, the angels or anything like that. And yet he goes and when he immediately says, come to my house. I want you to come to my house right now. This is my version. I don't want anybody to see you. I'll just come to my house, hide at my house, stay at my house. I'll feed you, and then early in the morning, before anybody is really up and going yet, you can leave. He just wants to get them in to where they can hopefully be safe, and then shoo them out. He doesn't even want them there. And they say in the end of verse 2, no, we'll just stay in the street all night. No, it's fine. We'll just stay out in public. It's fine. But of course, he goes and Lot goes, no. In fact, Lot presses on them and not just convinces them, but it's sort of a thing where he wouldn't take no for an answer. Till they finally gave in and came to his house. And it says he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they did eat. So he did do what he said. However, they did not get into the house unseen. It didn't take too awful long for a crowd. It would have been the time that it took them to sit down and eat dinner. That it only took about that long for a crowd of men to come over to the house. In verse 4, but before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lot and said unto him, where are the men which came in to thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them. Now, once again, this at the end of verse 5, the no is not just, oh, hey, we saw, you had a couple of people. We haven't had visitors here in a long time. We want to greet them. Welcome to the city, and show them a good time. No, this is speaking in that intimate, sexual nature. Okay? So they come to the house. Okay, now I'm not talking about a small welcoming party. Okay? It was old and young, all the men of the city from every quarter came. The house was surrounded on all sides with these men. And this is showing that this is not something new. By saying the young and the old, it's saying different generations. It is just something that has become, if you want to call it, natural to them at this point. They don't even necessarily see it maybe as a horrible thing. Okay? It is something that they just believe, oh, this is the standard now. This is what's happening. Well, might I put out there, what are we seeing in the United States right now?
Very acceptable.
Yeah. It is not just acceptable, but it is being put out there that we have to accept it. If you are a decent human being, if you are, just because we live in America, to be a true American means that you will accept. If that's what it is to be a true American, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to say
if you are a Christian, you have to accept.
Right, yes. Yeah, oh, God loves everybody and that sort of thing. And blah, blah, blah. Yes, that's true. God does love that individual. Absolutely. He loves the individual.
He hates the sin.
He hates the sin. And not to get sidetracked here. Maybe go on and on that. But, so this is what they're doing. They are saying, so there's first stating that, okay, we saw that you brought men into your house. Give them to us so that we can do this with them. Okay? They're not beating around the bush. It's just, essentially you could say their way of life, okay? At this point, does that make it right? Absolutely not. And Lot goes out to the door, and he shut the door after him. So it's one of these situations where he opened the door. The picture I have in my head, he opens the door just enough for himself to sort of get out so he can shut the door behind him. And he goes, and this is when we see he's speaking to the people, to these men, to this group of men. Verse 7 said, I pray you, or I beg you, brethren. And so he's trying to make, by saying brethren, he's not necessarily saying that I support what you are doing by calling you brethren. He's trying to say, look, I'm your neighbor. Do this for me, okay? I live here. Just do this for me. Do me this one favor, please. Do not sow wickedly. And then, where does this next verse, okay? I think he lived with Abraham and Sarah a little too long when it came to things like this. Because what does he go on to say there? He does not go on to say anything about, look, just don't do this, and just try to keep pressing on that. No. Instead, he goes, I have 2 daughters in my house. Beautiful young women. They're not married. I will give them to you, and you can do whatever you want to them. What kind of father is that? Makes you sick just thinking about that. But that is what he does, just to try to protect these 2 angels that came into the city. And in verse 9, it's where the men speak up. They say, stand back. And then they tell him a story. Tell him something that he would have known about, to bring it to remindance of him. Is saying, look, remember that person that came in impersonating? I think, what was it, a judge? Yes. Verse 9, let's just read verse 9. And they said, stand back. And they said again, this one fellow came in to sojourn, and he will needs be a judge. Now will we deal worse with thee than with them? And they pressed sore upon the man, even Lot came near to break the door. They're saying, look, remember that guy who came in impersonating a judge? Remember him? Remember how we dealt with him? If you don't let us in, we're going to deal even worse with you. You can't imagine what we're going to do to you if you don't give us these men or let us in. And at this point, they are pushing into him, pushing against Lot, to the point where it says that they were going to even try to break down the door. Verse 10, but the men, this is speaking of the angels, put forth their hand, so they opened the door, pulled Lot into the house, shut the door. However, they did something else. They smote the men who were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. These are men who are literally on the doorstep, in front of the door, and yet this blindness that they were struck with confused them so great that they couldn't even find the door that was right in front of them. And this is not something that would have been, how could I put it, that Lot should have taken lightly, seeing, okay, at this point, Lot would have known for certain, these are not just men that, God sent, okay? These men are blind. They're stumbling around. They're tripping over each other. They can't even find the door, even though it's right in front of them. And yet he still hesitates. We'll see that in a couple minutes here. And then starting in verse 12, and the men said unto Lot, hast thou here any besides, son-in-law, and thy sons, and thy daughters, and whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of this place, for we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxing great before the face of the Lord. And the Lord has sent us to destroy it. Now at first, you notice that what you got to understand, when it comes to angels, okay, they can do anything that the Lord has given, that God has given them the power to do. Okay, so in this case, that God gave them power to strike blindness and thus confusion on the men outside. However, one thing they did not know about Lot was what he really had for a family. And the reason why I say this is they mention his sons. Well, you notice, unless if Lot didn't care about his sons, when we go on to the next verse, when Lot goes out, he speaks to his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, up, get you out of this place, the Lord will destroy this city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. Okay, and then in verse 15, in the morning, the angels had to really hustle Lot. He was dragging his feet, and said, take thy wife and thy 2 daughters, which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. So he goes, you notice, he doesn't speak to any sons, but he went to his sons-in-laws. You know, whether it was that he cared for his sons-in-laws, or he knew, I can't just go to my daughters and say, come with me, because they would have submitted to their husbands. Okay, so he went to the husbands, said, look, please come with me. The Lord is going to destroy the city. And yet, it says that they just considered him as one that mocked unto his, as one that mocks, as saying, he's lost it. You know, they made fun of him. You know, sort of, who was another one that people made fun of until they were destroyed? Noah. You notice it's not something, it's not a new thing. It seems to be something that happens, and we see that in today's world too. Christians that get made fun of just simply because of their faith. So we see that, well, remember the deal that Abraham made with the Lord, 10 people. Well, you notice in verse 15, when the morning arose, sun's just coming up, the angels hastened Lot, saying, arise, take thy wife, thy 2 daughters, which are here. There were 4. There weren't even 10. And Lot was raised for a very good portion of his life under the roof of Abraham. And yet when he went into Sodom, seeing the pleasures of Sodom, the comforts, of Sodom, he essentially forgot his faith. In the sense of, faith is, it was preached this morning. Faith is not sitting in a chair. Faith is not waiting for Jesus to come back. Faith goes beyond that. There's more to that, and that is sharing, going. And obviously, he didn't even do that with his sons-in-laws. He also, as we would say, Christian father, should not have allowed his daughters to marry in that city, but he became relaxed. He became comfortable in Sodom. And because of this, he is losing some of his daughters. We know at least 2. Don't know if there were more. He's losing at least 2 daughters because of that. And I am sure, as a father, that is, I'm sure, even if not quite so much at this point, I'm sure once Sodom was destroyed, I'm sure that was something that was going through his head. What kind of father have I been? And probably looking, what could I have done? What did I do wrong? What could I have done differently? Of course, that's a long list, but so then getting back to the text here tonight. Oh, let's see, where were we? Verse 15. So the angels are having to really push them to get going. And we see that in verse 16, he didn't really want to leave. Very first, while he lingered, okay, he was dragging his feet. He did not want to leave. Whether it's because, he didn't want to leave his home, whether it's because he saw daughters there, we don't know. What we know is that he lingered, to where that the men, meaning the angels, laid hold upon his hand, upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his 2 daughters, the Lord being merciful unto him, and they brought him forth and set him without the city. So whether this means they grabbed a hold of their hands and practically dragged them, or if they were, because remember, they're angels. Okay, these 2 men are angels. They can do anything that God gives them the power to do. We saw that with the blindness. For all we know, it could have been a thing of grabbing their hands and we're able to literally lift them and carry them. But either way, they forced them to get outside of the city. Why? Because the Lord is a merciful one, is a merciful God. Now, verse 17. Okay, we still start to see this stubbornness and the laziness in Lot's life here, and that is the angels give him instruction. Middle of the verse: escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain. Escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. Where are they telling him to go? They're essentially telling him, at this point, go to the mountain. Now that could be 2 things. You can either go into the mountains, be by yourself, or who else was there? Abraham. Remember, it was in the plains where Lot had decided to go and settle. So that meant Abraham would have been in the mountains. So they gave him the choice here. They said, go to the mountains. So he had the choice, being by himself or going back to Abraham, where he could be taken care of and could get help for his family.
I see the picture here. Go back to what you first knew.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. You've been down in this plain. You have proven yourself that you are not, how could we say, strong enough, in your faith to be able to shine down here. You do nothing but get relaxed and comfortable in the sin. Get out of this life. Go back to the place where you were before. And what does he say? Oh, not so, my Lord, verse 18. He goes, oh, no, I don't want to do that. Oh, come on. Verse 19, behold now, thy servant hath found grace in thy sight. Thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast showed unto me in saving my life. I cannot escape to the mountain, lest some evil take me and I die. Behold now, the city is near to flee unto, and it's a little one. Oh, let me escape thither. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. He's saying, look, the mountains, they can be a dangerous place. Wait a second, didn't you just experience, multiple experiences here, that these are angels sent from God? You really think God is going to have these angels tell you to go into the mountains just so you can die? God's protecting you here. Obviously, he's going to protect you there too. But no, he's just like, no, the mountains, that's, my feet aren't used to that rugged terrain. I could fall, I could get hurt. There could be a mountain lion. There could be, there's so many dangers there. No. It's too hard. But there's a little city over here. There's a little city. It's not a bad city. Doesn't have all the sin that Sodom had. It's a small city. How about I just go there instead? And he said, verse 21, he said unto him, See, I have accepted thee concerning this thing also, that I will not overthrow this city for the which thou hast spoken. Haste thee, escape thither, for I cannot do anything till thou be come thither. Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. And Zoar literally means little city. That's all it means, little city. And so the angels say, okay, fine. You know what? That's what you want? Fine. In this case, that city will not be destroyed. However, this work has to be done. Sodom has to be destroyed. You want to go that way? Fine. But get going. Move your butts. Because we can't destroy this until you are safe. Until you are in that place. Until you are out of this place.
Now, is there a stipulation that he can't become an authority in that city?
Because he
I don't know.
says, I will not overthrow this city for the which thou hast spoken, or?
I think that's the angels.
That's the angel.
Oh, that's the angel
That's the angel
speaking.
saying,
Yeah,
okay.
saying they will not destroy that city.
Right.
Because, he's like, okay, fine, we'll spare that little city since you're going to live there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, let's see, the sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered into Zoar, verse 23. Then verse 24, then the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities and that which grew upon the ground. What happened? Exactly what God said he was going to do.
Done this.
It consumed everything, so that way, even, like, for example, Lot wouldn't have been able to go back. There was literally nothing there. Everything of the ground, everything was destroyed, and there was nothing, even to this day, in the place where they believe Sodom, in this plain where Sodom and Gomorrah would have been, nothing grows there at all. Because of the brimstone and all of that is on the ground and in the ground, nothing can grow there, even to this day.
There is so much salt you can literally float.
That's where the Dead Sea is.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's the that's sort of the, I think part of the I can't think of the word I'm looking for. But anyways, that is sort of the importance of verse 26 too. But his wife looked back from behind him when she heard her hometown being destroyed, where her daughters were, where her friends were. She turned, she looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. There is in that area a large pillar, even to this day, that is, as far as they can tell, solid salt. It is a protected place. It is not allowed to be gone too close to or touched.
It's very dated.
Gated. It's almost beyond gated, you could say. Yeah, it's very highly protected because it's considered a cursed ground. Okay, a cursed place. You cannot get to it, but there is a pillar of salt there. Still there to this day. And then we see, the eyes switch back to Abraham fairly quickly, which is verses 27 through the beginning of 30. It says that Abraham got up early in the morning and went to that same place where he stood with the Lord, okay? He looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward all the land of the plain, and beheld, and lo, the smoke of the country went up as the smoke of a furnace. All that he could see when he looked out, there wasn't even remains of a city to be seen, nothing. It was just simply smoke, as of that coming out of a furnace. That's all that could be seen. Oh yeah.
Sulfur and all that stuff.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it's almost like the paper plants up in Berlin, New Hampshire, the sulfur problem.
Yep.
Pretty putrid.
Yep. And I mean, if anybody wasn't quite sure what the smell is, you take a match and you strike it. That first little hint of smell you get right there. Take that and multiply that a lot. I mean, it's just, that's all you would have been able to smell. It would have been, yeah, exactly. The men that trimmed their nose hairs wouldn't have had to worry about it because they would have burned off. They would have burned right off smelling that. But anyways, verse 29, it came to pass when God destroyed the cities of the plain that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the cities in the which Lot dwelt. Lot went up, and you notice, okay, so it's just telling us he kept his promise with Abraham, okay? He did not destroy the righteous. Now you notice, he did still destroy the city. Why? There weren't 10 righteous. However, the righteous, or the ones that would have been, you might consider righteous, okay, at that point, those 4, God did save, okay? He did make sure that the righteous did not get destroyed. So remember, Lot went to Zoar. That's where he wanted to do, or that's where he wanted to go. After the destruction, what does he do? Whether it's because of conviction or what, we don't know. But he hightails it, he leaves Zoar, and goes into the mountains. However, does he go to Abraham? No. So at this point, there's only 3. It's Lot and his 2 daughters. And they went into the mountain, and literally, we see in verse 30, and he dwelt in a cave, him and his 2 daughters. Okay, they lived in a cave. Nothing but the clothes on their back. And it is at this point that, now we don't know if this is something instant or if they've been there for a little while at this point, but his daughters now, what wonderful daughters, but also remember what wonderful father they had, willing to throw them to the men. The daughters at this point start seeing, wait a second, there's no men around for us. We have needs. There's no men. There's no way for us to have a child, for us to be able to have children. That one thing that the majority of all women want is that the love of a child, being able to take care of a child, being able to love a child. It wasn't going to be possible. There was nobody around. There was nobody left. So in this, they came up with this wicked plot. Of course, what did it start with? Alcohol. They decided, well, you know what? All the men are gone, except for Dad.
But he doesn't have a son, which is what they were concerned about, his lineage.
Right, they had mentioned, and there is speculation on this. Thank you for actually mentioning that. I read this earlier and I forgot about it, so I didn't put it in my notes here. Is that there is speculation that it's possible that these daughters knew of the promise to Abraham, and they wanted Lot's line to be continued, thinking that Lot's line might be worked into that blessing. Now, this is just men's speculation. This is not something out of the Bible, But
this all happened before Isaac came on the scene. Right?
yes, this is all before Isaac came on the scene. This all happened in that 1 year period between when when the Lord said, Sarah's going to have a child. Remember, he said in 1 year, 1 year's time, you'll have a child, okay? So this happens in that 1 year time that the girls decide, well, you know what? We're going to, he's lonely. I'm sure he was depressed. He lost his wife. He lost his home. He lost other daughters of his. He's depressed.
Prestige.
Oh, you know what? It's going to be easy to convince him to drink. And every single time, he finishes off his glass of wine, we're going to top it off. We're going to pour him another one. And what they did, they got him drunk to the point where essentially he wouldn't have known what he was doing. And they both laid with him. Now this wasn't even on one specific occasion, say at the same time or whatever. It was, we see that, verse 33, and they made their father drink wine that night. And the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Okay, so it may have even gone beyond the thing of necessarily, he may not even been conscious at this point, okay? So what's that saying that they were doing? Exactly what they were seeing in Sodom, that the men did all the time, right? And then it goes on to say, and it came to pass on the morrow. So first it was the elder of the two girls, and it came to pass on the morrow, verse 34, and the firstborn said to the younger, Behold, I lay yesternight with my father. Let us make him drink wine this night also. And go thou in and lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. This is where Addie had said they were trying to preserve the line. They wanted to make this older daughter wanted to make sure, said just in case, if that didn't take with me, she's saying this is just the next day. Do the same thing, but this time you do it. Verse 35, and they made their father drink wine that night also. The younger arose, lay with him, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Once again, we got him blind, drunk, possibly even passed out drunk. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father. And the firstborn bare a son, called his name Moab. The same is the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger, she also bare a son, and called his name Benami. The same is the father of the children of Ammon unto this day. Just a little snippet here. I just want to see if anybody can think of who is one person in the Bible, Old Testament, later down the road, who was a Moabite. Someone who is Ruth was a Moabite. Look at, this is the line that she came from. She came from Lot's line. She came because of this, through this drunken sex. Okay? That is the line that she came from. And yet, we'll look at Ruth and Boaz and all that another time, but I don't want to get into that. But anyways, this is where literally we went a little over, but this is where Lot just ends. We don't know how long Lot lived. We don't know what happened to Lot or necessarily his daughters per se, anything else about them after what we just read. That's it. God saw fit. That's just like, you know what? There's nothing, I don't know that per se, other than Ruth, we don't really see anybody of any other importance, I don't believe, really pulled out of the, like, for example, the Moabites. out of that lineage, out of the lineages from Lot.
And Ruth had to leave that.
Right, Ruth had to
To
leave
become
that.
a child of God.
Exactly. But yeah, so we see nothing else about him or his lineage other than Ruth, which, as Pastor just said, had to remove herself from that to become a child of God, and marry Boaz.
Moab and Ammon were both thorns in the flesh of Israel through the time of
And if
the Exodus and
Mhm.
Judges.
And if I'm not mistaken, those two countries or areas, however you want to call it, are like neighbors with, I believe, Judah or like Israel area. I think they were like right in close to them. Yeah, I believe they're right in close to them too. So, but anyways, tonight was not necessarily you could say, a pleasant one to look at. However, it is something that, it's something important. It's something, no matter what, if it comes from the Bible, there's something you can draw from it. Even if it's, well, you know what, I better stay away from sin. You know what? There you go. But then there's a lot to be had there. Like I said, I had learned new stuff, so I hope some of you learned something tonight too. If not, just maybe be reminded of something that you had forgotten about. So, Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for tonight. Lord, thank you for all the accounts, Lord, that you give us in the Bible, whether it be those that are easy to read or study, or those that tend to be more difficult, just because they're not of a pleasant nature like the one we looked at tonight. But Lord, we thank you for everything that you have given us and the different warnings and examples that you have given us in your word as well. And Lord, I just ask your blessing on these people, the Bible studies and other services throughout this week. In Jesus' name, amen.